No, you're good. I was just staring at the screen. Hey, we're going to start class. Friday, December 4th, advanced class as we get into more of our outsiders with grievers and greasers and grievers on greasers.
And socks.
And socks and shoes and all kinds of articles of clothing. See, the tie game this week was penguins because I wore penguins every day. Book report comes due in 4 days for those of you who've been putting it off. Apparently, my wife stepped in and brought in money, but now we have raised it, and apparently this will be the frightening thing I'll be bringing to school here coming up soon enough. And then we have, the novel homework, which is for the outsiders. There's 4 options. You'll find it on that place. It's chew, and it's chew. And then as we go through, one of your homework options is basically going through there and making those connections. So the more connections you make as we read it, the easier it's going to make your world. Todd?
Can you do one that we've already done?
Yeah, just a moment.
Or road pilot.
As in, for the homework, can you?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. Absolutely. Let's see. And as we get into our book, hang on. Oh, no, things are falling. Point of view. What is our point of view for the story?
First person.
Nicely done. Way to jump in.
Yeah.
And that goes to horrible. First person, and who's the kid telling us the story?
Pony boy.
Pony Boy is correct. Who are Pony Boy's 2 brothers?
Soda and dairy. Soda pop and dairy.
Soda Pop and Dairy. And he has a friend who likes to steal hubcaps. And who steals hubcaps?
Steve.
His friend, Steve. Ooh, how old is Pony Boy?
14.
And how old is his oldest brother, Dairy?
20.
20. And which one is considered really, really handsome and good looking?
Soda.
And how old is Soda?
17.
Yeah, I think 17. 16, 17 is about the same thing, right out there. Then we get there. Let's see. Starts off because he wants to go and be looking like Paul Newman because Paul Newman's a hottie. Now he's dead, so he's just a good-looking zombie. We have that part, and then the salad dressing, and we got to. Who is it that's driving the Corvair?
The sauce.
The Soches. Because what does Soch stand for? Sockles. And what is it the socials offered to do for Pony Boy? They are a mobile haircutting service, mobile barbershop, to which he apparently is like, no mobile barbershop, because the problem with free mobile barbershops is they're not very good because they try to cut his hair by starting at his neck, which apparently is bad, and he gets all whiny and complaining. Who is it that wears the madras?
The sauce.
Nice.
The guy with the knife.
The guy with the knife, the Soches, who does have a knife, and what does he smell like?
English
Old tobacco. He goes, Mr. Tobacco, Mr. Tobacco, just like me. Never mind. And so you have the tobacco in there, see the greasers, and then we have the ones who go against the greasers, the grievers. The Soches, the grievers, and the greasers.
Socks. They are
Focus
they
there.
socks.
I like
Soch dog.
the dog is a sock. I like the.
Yeah, I typed in preppy dog and that came up. And then we have the cowlick, and Dairy's the one with the cowlick on his head. And then we have, I think, 2-Bit is the one that cocks the eyebrow when his brother's talking. And we got to Steve, who is good at lifting hubcaps. And when you lift hubcaps, what does that mean you're doing?
Stealing them.
Stealing them. 3Q. Soda Pop. Who did I say?
No, 2-Bit's one. Yeah, it's 2-Bit.
They both do it actually when they get into it. He says you learned it from 2-Bit, so at the time it was Soda Pop, but 2-Bit will also be eyebrow raising and stuff like that. And then we're going to talk about Will Rogers here coming up in a moment. You mean my choir teacher? Not the choir teacher, they just happen to have the same name. He was an old stand-up comic who was also on TV. He was like a cowboy, and he told a whole bunch of funny jokes.
Captain America.
He was also known as Captain America by a completely different name.
Rogers was in the name.
They're right. One. Wait, isn't he the quarterback for the Green Bay Packers? Oh wait, still nope, different first name. So many. We left off on page
9.
So page 9. All right. And then continuing from there, as you find those things that connect to you and stuff like that, I have to toss chips. They're now in the bottom of it. And then also there's a book on my desk right yonder. You're going to take that to Mrs. Foreman because that kid should be in the class. And you'll open up the front cover, and I think it has his name in there. Thank you. Oh, and welcome. All right. Two-Bit Matthews was the oldest of the gang and the wisecracker of the bunch. He was about 6 feet tall, stocky in build, and very proud of his long, rusty-colored sideburns. He had gray eyes and a wide grin, and he couldn't stop making funny remarks to save his life. You couldn't shut up that guy. He always had to get his 2 bits worth in, hence his name. Even his teachers forgot his real name was Keith, and we hardly remembered he had one. Life was one big joke to 2-Bit. He was famous for shoplifting and his black-handled switchblade, which he couldn't have acquired without his first talent. And he was always smarting off to the cops. He really couldn't help it. Everything he said was so irresistibly funny that he just had to let the police in on it to brighten up their dull lives. That's the way he explained it to me. He liked fights, blondes, and for some unfathomable reason, school. I highlighted that and put me because for some reason as a teacher I actually still like being in school. He was still a junior at 18 and a half, and he never learned anything. He just went for kicks. I liked him real well because he kept us laughing at ourselves, as well as at other things. He reminded me of Will Rogers. Maybe it was the grin. If I had to pick the real character of the gang, it would be Dallas Winston. Dally. I used to like to draw his picture when he was in a dangerous mood, for then I could get his personality down in a few lines. He had an elfish face with high cheekbones and a pointed chin, small, sharp animal teeth, and ears like a lynx. His hair was almost white, it was so blonde, and he didn't like haircuts or hair oil either. So it fell over his forehead in wisps and kicked out in the back in tufts and curled behind his ears and along the nape of his neck. His eyes were blue, blazing ice, cold with a hatred of the whole world. Dally had spent 3 years on the wild side of New York and been arrested at the age of 10. He was tougher than the rest of us. Tougher, colder, meaner. The shade of difference that separates a greaser from a hood, it wasn't present in Dally. He was as wild as the boys in the downtown outfits, like Tim Shepard's gang. In New York, Dally blew off steam in gang fights. But here, organized gangs are rarities. They're just small bunches of friends who stick together. And the warfare is between the social classes. A rumble, when it's called, is usually born of a grudge fight, and the opponents just happen to bring their friends along. There are a few named gangs around, like the River Kings and the Tiber Street Tigers, but here in the Southwest, there's no gang rivalry. So Dally, even though he could get into a good fight sometimes, had no specific thing to hate. No rival gang. Only socials. And you can't win against them, no matter how hard you try, because they've got all the breaks. And even whipping them isn't going to change that fact. Maybe that was why Dallas was so bitter. He had quite a reputation. They have a file on him down at the police station. He'd been arrested. He got drunk. He rode in rodeos, lied, cheated, stole, rolled drunks, jumped small kids. He did everything. I didn't like him, but he was smart, and you had to respect him. Two of the things they mentioned there with him was jumping small kids. Jumping people in general. They're going to talk about jumping people throughout the story. Jumping is different than just beating someone up, and it's not the same thing as mugging or robbing. Jumping, you don't always have the intention of taking money from them. It's where you use when it beats someone to a pulp and leave them like whimpering on the ground. But specifically, jumping is when you do it with a group of friends. You don't do it by yourself typically. You do it with like you and 4 or 5 others. And you want to surprise someone. And the 5 of you jump out and go, boo! And they go, ah! And when they fall down, you get on top of them and you hit them and kick them until they're bleeding and crying. And then you run away laughing. Mr. Brovicast, that's not very nice. Well, no, it's horrible. You're not a very good person when you do it. Specifically, who does Dally like to jump?
Small kids.
Small kids. So yeah, he likes to beat up little kids. Mr. Brovicast, that's not very good. No, he's not a very good person on any level. It also says he rolls drunks. When you roll a drunk, it's when you go to a party and you find someone that's been drinking a lot, and they go, and they fall down. And then you walk over to them and you roll them over and take their wallet. And so that's what he does a lot. Is he goes and just robs drunk people when they pass out on the ground, and he just takes their stuff. And they wake up and like, oh, my wallet and rings and watch. He's just like, hee, and goes off running. So that's who Dally is. As we get into the story, both Dally and Derry play big roles in it, but it's easy to get them confused because their names sound so similar to each other. So to help you out, Dally has an L in it, loser starts with an L. Derry has an R in it, relative starts with an R, because that's his brother. So R for relative and L for a loser. So when you get into them, you can remember which one is it. When you get to Dally doing things like, oh, that guy's a loser. Oh, that's Dally. So that'll help you out a little bit. Johnny Cade was last and least. If you can picture a little dark puppy that's been kicked too many times and is lost in a crowd of strangers, you'll have Johnny. He was the youngest next to me, smaller than the rest with a slight build. He had big black eyes and a dark tanned face. And his hair was jet black and heavily greased and combed to the side, but it was so long that it fell in shaggy bangs across his forehead. He had a nervous, suspicious look in his eyes, and that beating he got from the Socias didn't help matters. He was the gang's pet, everyone's kid brother. His father was always beating him up, and his mother ignored him, except when she was hacked off at something, and then you could hear her yelling at him clear down at our house. I think he hated that worse than getting whipped. He would have run away 1,000,000 times if we hadn't been there. If it hadn't been for the gang, Johnny would never have known what love and affection are. I wiped my eyes hurriedly. Did you catch him? No, they got away this time, the dirty... Two-Bit went on cheerfully, calling the Socias every name he could think of or just make up. Kids okay? I'm okay. I tried to think of something to say. I'm usually pretty quiet around people, even the gang, and I changed the subject. I didn't know you were out of the cooler yet, Dally. Good behavior. I got off early. Cooler would be...
Jail.
Yeah, jail. Dallas lit a cigarette and handed it to Johnny. Everyone sat down to have a smoke and relax. The smoke always lessens the tension. I'd quit trembling and my color was back. The cigarette was calming me down. Two-Bit cocked an eyebrow. It's a nice-looking bruise you got there, kid. I touched my cheek gingerly. Really? Two-Bit nodded sagely. It's a nice cut, too. It makes you look tough. Tough and tough are two different words. Tough is the same as rough. Tough means cool, sharp, like a tough-looking Mustang or a tough record. In our neighborhood, both are compliments. Steve flicked his ashes at me. What were you doing walking by your lonesome? Leave it to good old Steve to bring up something like that. I was coming home from the movies. I didn't think... Well, you don't ever think, Derry broke in. Not at home or anywhere when it counts. You must think at school with all those good grades you bring home, and you've always got your nose in a book, but do you ever use your head for common sense? No siree, bub. And if you did have to go by yourself, you should have carried a blade. I just stared at the hole in the toe of my tennis shoe. Me and Derry just didn't dig each other. I never could please him. He would have hollered at me for carrying a blade if I had carried one. If I brought home B's, he wanted A's. If I got A's, he wanted to make sure they stayed A's. If I was playing football, I should be in studying. If I was reading, I should be out playing football. He never hollered at Soda Pop. Not even when Soda dropped out of school or got tickets for speeding. He just hollered at me. Soda was glaring at him. Leave my kid brother alone, you hear? It ain't his fault he likes to go to the movies. It ain't his fault the Socias like to jump us. If he had been carrying a blade, it would have been a good excuse to cut him to ribbons. Soda always takes up for me. Derry said impatiently, when I want my kid brother to tell me what to do with my other kid brother, I'll ask you, kid brother. But he laid off me. He always does when Soda Pop tells him to, most of the time. Next time, get any one of us to go with you, Pony Boy, Two-Bit said. Any of us will. Speaking of movies, Dally yawned, flipping away his cigarette butt. Now I'm walking over to the nightly double tomorrow night. Anybody want to come and hunt some action? Steve winked. Sorry, I got distracted. Thank you. Steve shook his head. Me and Soda are picking up Evie and Sandy for the game. He didn't need to look at me the way he did right then. I wasn't going to ask if I could come. I'd never tell Soda because he really likes Steve a lot. Sometimes I can't stand Steve Randall. I mean it. Sometimes I hate him. Derry sighed, just like I knew he would. Derry never had time to do anything anymore. Now I'm working tomorrow night. Dally looked at the rest of us. Well, how about y'all? Two-Bit, Johnny Cake, you and Pony want to come? Me and Johnny will come, I said. I knew Johnny wouldn't open his mouth unless he was forced to. Is that okay, Derry? Yes, since it ain't a school night. Derry was real good about letting me go places on the weekends. On school nights, I could hardly leave the house. I was planning on getting boozed up tomorrow night, Two-Bit said. If I don't, I'll walk over and find y'all. Steve was looking at Dally's hand. His ring, which he had rolled a drunk senior to get, was back on his finger. Did you break up with Sylvia again? Yeah, this time it's for good. That little broad was two-timing me again while I was in jail. I thought of Sylvia and Evie and Sandy and Two-Bit's mini blondes. Well, they were the only kinds of girls I would look at, so I thought. Tough, loud girls who wore too much eye makeup and giggled and swore too much. I liked Soda's girl Sandy just fine, though. Her hair was natural blonde, and her laugh was soft like her china blue eyes. And she didn't have a real good home or anything, and was our kind, greaser. But she was a real nice girl. Still, lots of times I wondered what other girls were like. The girls who were bright-eyed, had their dresses a decent length, and acted as if they'd like to spit on us if given a chance. Some were afraid of us. And remembering Dallas Winston, I didn't blame them. But most looked at us like we were dirt, gave us the same kind of look that the Socias did when they came by in their Mustangs and Corvairs and yelled, "Grease!" at us. I wondered about them, the girls, I mean. Did they cry when their boys were arrested like Evie did when Steve got hauled in? Or they run out on them the way Sylvia did Dallas? Maybe their boys didn't get arrested or beaten up or busted up in rodeos. I was still thinking about it while I was doing my homework that night. I had to read Great Expectations for English, and that kid, Pip, he reminded me of us. The way he felt marked lousy because he wasn't a gentleman or anything, and the way that girl kept looking down on him. That happened to me once. One time in biology, I had to dissect a worm, and the razor wouldn't cut, so I used my switchblade. The minute I flicked it out, I forgot what I was doing, or I never would have done it. This girl right beside me kind of gasped and said, "They're right, you are a hood." That didn't make me feel so hot. There were a lot of Socias in that class. I mean, I get put into A classes because I'm supposed to be smart, and most of them thought it was pretty funny. I didn't, though. She was a cute girl. She looked real good in yellow. We deserve a lot of our trouble, I thought. Dallas deserves everything he gets and should get worse if you want the truth. And Two-Bit, he doesn't really want or need half the things he swipes from stores. He just thinks it's fun to swipe everything that isn't nailed down. And I can understand why Soda Pop and Steve get into drag races and fights so much, though. Both of them have too much energy, too much feeling, and no way to blow it off. "Oh, rub harder, Soda," I heard Derry mumbling. "You're going to put me to sleep." I looked through the door. Soda Pop was giving Derry a back rub. Derry's always pulling muscles. He roofs houses, and he's always trying to carry 2 bundles of roofing up the ladder. I knew Soda would put him to sleep, because Soda can put about anyone out when he sets his head to it. I thought Derry worked too hard anyway. I did too. Derry didn't deserve to work like an old man when he was only 20. He'd been a real popular guy in school. He was captain of the football team, and he'd been voted Boy of the Year, but we just didn't have the money for him to go to college, even with the athletic scholarship he won. And now he didn't have time between jobs to even think about college, so he never went anywhere, never did anything anymore except work out at gyms and go skiing with some old friends of his sometimes. I'm going to pause there because there are a couple of things I want to get to with you guys first. I almost got to the end of the first chapter. Chapter 2 is where rising action begins, but there's a couple of things I want to explain in chapter 2. Your goal is to get to the end of chapter 2 by Monday, because I'm going to talk about some of the things you're going to have, which is why you went and marked that page 36. That's the end of chapter 2. So that's your goal, places to get. So far, just give up now. In the story, they do talk about switchblades. You guys know what a switchblade is?
Yeah, it's like a thing that you can flip out.
Yeah. I tried to bring one in so you guys can get a chance to see it. Like that. It has like little blazing.
Why can't you do it to her?
Stop me!
Because I tortured her last time. I'm trying to spread it around. That's right. Here, catch.
I'll catch it.
My hands are circle.
The way that the switchblade works is it has, this was just a fake knife, but it has a little button on there, so whenever you're wanting to stab someone, like some of you might want to do to me, there's a little button you hit, and the blade pops out, and you go and do the stabbing. Stabby. And then you hit a little button, and the blade goes back in. They are kind of illegal now, because there's no point in having one unless you're just wanting to stab people. And apparently the police frown on that. Plus, the problem with it was a lot of times boys would carry them in their front jeans pockets, and it turns out boys are idiots, and they would often roughhouse with each other, and it's all fun and games. So your friend like kicks you in the leg, and it goes, and you're like, ah, and it stabs you, and all like the blood, stuff like that, and you talk in a higher voice. And so because of that, they ended up coming out with a different one called. Twitchy.
It's real. That one's real. That one's real.
It's real, yes! They have one that's called a rainbow blade. And the reason it's called a rainbow blade, it's a real cone.
Oh. I don't know what you have.
Just keeping you on your toes. The rainbow blade, because it comes out when you hit it, woo, like a little rainbow. And so that was another type of switchblade. And that way, when it sits in your pocket and your friend kicks you, it doesn't shoot into your leg, thus, maiming you for life. It would just go boop, and then you would be okay. So that was the other kind of blade that they had.
There's one more.
And there is one more. You're right. See it coming. And then the other one was what's called a butterfly knife, which is not in the story, but because kids always ask, what about the one that goes flippy, flippy? And the butterfly knife is where the blade is on the inside, and you can flip it out. It's like, ooh, like that. Mine's a bottle opener.
What is
Safety first. Safety. And so it's the idea where the blade stays on the inside, and people like in the movies, they flip them around like that. I'm like, I'm going to stab you, like that. You stab me. And so that's the one. They don't use these. These what they have now, because you can't have a switchblade. And this way, once again, you can store a knife in your pocket when you need to quickly stab someone. Which, once again, some of you are probably thinking about doing it now.
They're so afraid of stuff.
In the story, they're going to talk about Dally shoplifting cools. If you don't know what cools are, that's good. It's cigarettes. So when they talked about him stealing them, these are what he's stealing. And then a bunch of the greasers go and hang out at a drive-in restaurant. And the drive-in restaurants, A&W, Sonic Burgers, Hot Dog and Suds, where you have to park and they bring the food out to you and you get to like order for like a little drive-through thing. The drive-through thing, you don't drive past it, you just drive at it. And so they're going to talk about those, and then they all go to a drive-in movie theater.
I've been to one of those.
It's where you park outside, and it's like an all-outdoor theater with a big screen, very cool. They used to have one in Noblesville, but it's gone now. But they go and hang out, and that's where the big stuff starts to happen, is when they go to this drive-in movie theater. They talk about, a couple of the guys are what's called a gas jockey, and what a gas jockey is when you pull into a gas station, they would have people who would fill up the gas for you. So instead of you getting out to do it, you would pull up, and there's a guy's job to come running out, like, how much do you want? Like $20 worth. And they would pump the gas for you while you get to sit in your car where it's all nice and warm. If you go to the East Coast, New Jersey, that's all they have. You cannot pump your own gas. It's a law. You have to have this guy come out and do it for you. Gas costs more, but you get to stay inside your car the whole time. So that's a gas jockey. Blue Mustang, they're going to have a character driving a Blue Mustang coming up, so you have an idea of what it looks like. Then they make fun of some people who have a Beatles haircut, because apparently that's what some of the socias had, and they're like, oh yeah, Beatles. It's coming back. It's just the shaggy hair where it's like all floppy. Bieber sort of had a little shaggy Beatles haircut kind of thing where it just hangs down your eyes. That's what they're talking about. Busted pop bottle, two more things. They talk about that. They're not talking about the plastic ones, because that's not going to hurt anyone when you go badonk on the head. They're talking about the glass ones, so you can stab someone. And then they're going to talk about this big fight that happens with a fountain in a park. They talk about getting in the water fountain. This is the water fountain that they're getting into. Not like the one in the hallway, because you can't get in that water fountain. That'd be ridiculous.
Oh, like the money one.
Yeah,
I have a question.
now you can take off.
Do you need